Growing up in the Appalachian Mountains, I was always cautioned about the old trails. Some were considered safe, frequently used paths leading to breathtaking viewpoints. Others, as my grandfather would often say, were forgotten for a reason. When I was 16, my friends and I decided to take a shortcut through one of these neglected trails to reach our campsite before nightfall. The path was overgrown, barely discernible, but we pressed on, laughing off my grandfather's warnings. As we ventured deeper, the forest grew progressively quieter. The birds ceased their chirping, and even the rustling of leaves seemed to hush. Soon, we began to notice peculiar carvings, symbols etched into trees, some appearing deep and fresh, others faded with age. There were circles, spirals, and strange figures with elongated limbs. None of us understood their meaning, but they all pointed in a singular direction, forward. By the time we realized we were lost, the sun had already dipped below the mountains. That's when the whispering began. Initially, it was faint, like the wind sifting through the trees, but then it became clearer, voices murmuring just beyond the reach of our flashlights. We called out, thinking perhaps someone was playing a trick on us, but there was no reply, only more whispering. It then started to encircle us. Panic set in. We turned back the way we came. But the path had altered, becoming narrower and darker. The symbols on the trees had transformed. Instead of abstract shapes, they now depicted human figures with hollow eyes and gaping mouths. And then we saw them. Tall, slender shadows standing amongst the trees, barely perceptible, shifting whenever we attempted to focus on them. One of them stepped closer. My friend screamed and bolted. We followed, crashing through the woods, running without any sense of direction. The whispers escalated into laughter, a distorted, mocking sound. Somehow, we stumbled out of the woods onto an old dirt road. The trail was gone. No opening in the trees. No indication of the path we had taken. My friend was never the same after that night. He ceased contact with our friend group and even moved away a year later. I tried my best to put the incident out of my mind. Just last week, while hiking with my girlfriend, I saw something carved into a tree near our cabin. It was one of those symbols, but freshly etched, and beneath it, in deep, jagged letters, was what appeared to be my name. I don't believe we were meant to leave that night, and I don't think they ever stopped watching. A few nights later, I heard something outside our cabin. At first, I dismissed it as typical nighttime sounds. The wind, the occasional crack of a branch, the house settling. But then, I heard the familiar whispering just outside the window. I lay there, frozen, barely breathing. Sarah was asleep beside me, oblivious. I slowly turned my head, my pulse thudding in my ears. Through the thin curtain, I could discern the outline of something tall, standing just beyond the trees. Someone watching. I squeezed my eyes shut, telling myself it wasn't real, that I was merely dreaming. The following morning, I discovered footprints outside the cabin, but they were not normal. They were long and misshapen, as if whatever had been out there wasn't entirely human, or perhaps was attempting to appear so. The dirt around the base of a nearby tree was disturbed, and carved into its bark was a new message. You left, we remember. I didn't tell Sarah. I didn't want to frighten her, and I had no idea what they wanted. We left that night, and I pray I never hear them again. This account dates back to when I was about 15. These events continue to haunt me and instill a genuine wariness of the dark wherever I go, due to what transpired in that house. I fear it might recur someday. One day, my father decided he wanted to hire a medium to come to our house to attempt to reconnect with some deceased family members. My mother was strongly against this at the time. I, however, thought it was a good idea, as I also desired closure with certain family members. At the age of 8, I once woke up in the middle of the night in a state of panic, without really knowing why. I stayed awake for over an hour, consumed by dread, unable to comprehend why I felt something terrible was about to happen. Eventually, I reluctantly drifted back to sleep. The next morning, I was informed that my uncle had been in a freak accident and had died. I immediately broke down, crying until I nearly vomited. It wasn't solely because he was dead, but also because I had known something was going to happen. I just hadn't known exactly what, and I had said nothing. It almost felt as though I had caused his death. Of course, there was no way I could have known it would be him, or that something bad truly was going to occur. However, years later, I learned that the time I woke up in a panic was approximately the same time he died, and I connected the dots. That wasn't my only premonition. When I was about 12, I was at school the day before Valentine's Day. All the classes were celebrating with candy and movies, which was enjoyable, but I couldn't shake a feeling of sadness, as if someone was watching me. I felt awkward and out of place the entire day, not knowing why. After school, my mother picked me up, and my twin sister was with us as usual. But she informed us we were going to our grandmother's house, which was highly unusual, as we typically only went on weekends. As my mom continued driving, I asked her what had happened, knowing something was wrong. She refused to tell me, merely staring at me quietly through the rearview mirror. When we were about a block away, I heard my grandfather calling my name. It was just a whisper, but I swear I heard it. He had been in the hospital battling stage 4 spinal cancer that was progressing towards his brain. At that moment, I realized my grandfather had passed away. It took everything in me not to cry, because I wasn't entirely sure yet, and I was afraid I was just imagining it. My sister still had no idea, so I remained quiet. Eventually, upon arriving at our grandmother's house, my dad delivered the news. My grandfather was dead. It was difficult for my brothers and my sister, and it was hard for me too. But I still refused to cry. I could feel my grandfather didn't want us to be sad. He had been fighting cancer for a very painful year, so I knew he was now peacefully at rest. My father couldn't understand why I wasn't upset. He looked at me and asked, "Are you okay?" I told him that I had already known. Everyone looked at me confused, except my mother. My dad asked who had told me, and I said, "No one, I just knew." I explained how I had felt throughout the day and that I had heard his voice, but my dad didn't believe me. He just glared at my mother, assuming she had told us. He then asked my sister if she had known, and she said she had no idea, which proved my mother hadn't told us a word. About 3 months after he passed, I had a very vivid dream about my grandfather. I believe it was his way of saying a proper goodbye, since I hadn't seen him in over 6 months before he died. These were the reasons I wanted to have a session with the medium my dad hired. I wanted closure. However, my mother refused to let me or any of my siblings in the house during the session. She told us it wasn't safe and wouldn't be good for us. At the time, I had no idea how right she was. I begged and begged to have my own session, but my mother simply wouldn't budge, so I never did. Thankfully, I didn't, because what happened afterward was already horrific enough. I can't imagine what would have happened to me if I had actually connected. After the medium left, everything seemed fine, but not for long. About 2 weeks later, there was a fly infestation on the 2nd floor of the house, specifically in the kitchen, and only on one window. It was bizarre. They only huddled on the window screen. There had to be hundreds of them, all huge, just under the size of horseflies. With so many, They almost sounded like cicadas. We had no idea where they had come from, as if they had just appeared there. By the next day, most of them were dead, and the rest had disappeared. Obviously, this was strange, but at the time, we had no idea what had happened. I believe this may have been where the portal was, and that the day of the fly infestation was the day it opened. After that day, I began to see and hear things throughout the house. It began with the shadow man in the corner of my room. This thing had to be about 8 feet tall, as its head was just under the doorframe. I could feel it watching me. It would only stand in that corner if it was dark, almost like it was trying to hide. But I knew it was there because on the few occasions it wasn't, I could see the kitchen light, which we always left on, shining through the doorway. I didn't need to see it though, because I could feel it watching me. It felt very angry with me. It knew that I could see it, which upset it, but it was even more upset that I wouldn't leave. While I slept, my dreams were constant nightmares. I could hear an angry man screaming, "Get out! Get out!" To try and stop this, I slept with a cross under my bed, hoping it would help. But I think it only made things 10 times worse. After 3 nights, the cross disappeared without a trace. I pulled everything out of my room, my bed and dresser, and searched along the carpet where it met the floorboards. But I never found it. That made me sad, because it was something my grandfather had given me. After losing the cross, the shadow man seemed to follow me everywhere. He was always in the corner of my eye, right behind my shoulder, no matter where I went in the house. I also started to have regular sleep paralysis episodes. I never really saw anything during the episodes, but it always did take me almost a minute to move any part of my body. It happened so often, I developed a routine to break out of it as quickly as I could. One day while I was doing the dishes, I noticed that the corner of my right eye was entirely black. I shifted my gaze and realized the figure was only a few inches away from me. That scared me. It was the closest it had ever been. I whipped around and started to scream at it. "Who are you? What do you want from me? Just leave me alone. I don't know who you are." Of course, as soon as I turned around, it vanished. But my screams were loud enough to bring my mother in from outside. She asked what happened. I gave her some weak excuse, which she didn't really believe. Looking back, I wish I had told her the truth. Maybe she could have helped me. But at the time, I just felt crazy. How does a 15-year-old explain this, especially when you don't think your parents will believe you? I barely even believed it myself. Surprisingly, the shadow man did as I asked. He stayed away, but always in sight. I could see him everywhere, always standing on the opposite side of the house, or in reflections. Mirrors, TVs, anything reflective. The house had a very open concept, so he could see across it from one end to the other, even upstairs. After the screaming incident, other things started to happen. I began to see what people call a mimic, something that copies how someone looks or sounds. This one always mimicked my twin sister. The first time I saw it, I thought I was watching my sister walk from the stairwell into the living room, with her music turned up too loud, as usual. I went to the living room to talk to her and found no one there. I called her and asked where she was. She wasn't even home. She said she was at the doctor's office with our mom. Another time, I was talking to her in my room, and she sprayed one of those awful room sprays while chatting with me. A few seconds later, I heard something at the doorway, and I looked over. There she was again. She walked into my room and sprayed the same spray, repeating the exact conversation we had just had, only seconds ago. I told her she had just done that. but she denied it, saying I was seeing things. That encounter still creeps me out to this day. The scariest thing that happened to me in that house occurred when I was home alone with my 3 dogs. I was sitting in my room and heard heavy footsteps upstairs. Assuming there was an intruder, I grabbed a wooden bat we kept by the entryway. I also called one of my dogs, a Stafford Terrier mix, who was extremely loyal to me. All I had to do was snap, and he'd be by my side. Together, we went upstairs to search every inch of the place, but found no one. I decided I must have been paranoid, so I headed back downstairs. Suddenly, I heard this huge crash, and the other dogs began to bark. I ran down as fast as I could, bursting out of the stairwell. I saw my dogs barking at the floor in a circle, the hairs on their necks and tails standing straight up. In the center of the circle was a coffee cup, just sitting there with the coffee swirling around inside of it. Relieved that the cup wasn't broken, I picked it up and started to walk toward the sink. I turned away. The stairwell door, which never really closed properly, slammed shut behind me. Terrified, I threw the cup into the sink, grabbed all the dogs, and took them outside onto the deck. I sat there, not wanting to be in the house by myself anymore, afraid that if I stayed any longer, it would hurt me. My family moved out about 2 years later. My dad said that he and his girlfriend had some encounters after my siblings and mom left, but they didn't experience half of what I went through in that house. After we moved, I told my dad what had happened to me. He felt bad, said that he wished he'd known, and that he never would have hired that medium if he had realized there were such consequences. From what I understand, anyone who buys the house after us never stays too long. It makes me believe the portal there is still open. Ever since I moved out, I haven't had any more dreams or sleep paralysis. I believe that when he hired the medium, they never closed the portal properly. My advice is this: never do anything like that in your own home. You have no idea what might come of it or whom it might affect.